So we'll start at the top of the AFC as we try and figure out where the Bengals currently stand in the power rankings here on Theoretically Speaking. And the Chiefs are they're the reigning AFC champions. They've been in the Super Bowl each of the last 3 years. Would you take the Bengals today over what Kansas City has?
No. Benefit of the doubt, it still extends in the AFC. The Chiefs have not proved you wrong at all within their conference, so I would pick the Chiefs or the Bengals.
What's funny is the Bengals are only better than them at receiver. I feel like everywhere else on the field, you would take the Chiefs unit. Offensive line, obviously quarterback. In the backfield, it's like that's where the Chiefs are a little rough as well when it's between Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. But you're talking about Chase Brown?
I know you've been banging this drum for a long time, as has Nick right over at FS1. But I think that we have extended past using the Bengals beating the Chiefs in that AFC championship. That's you can't reference that anymore. That is ancient history. That does not apply to anything going forward until they give us something else to prove doubt.
It's funny. That's why I talk about all the time athletes, career arcs as well as sometimes it's team career arcs. Because Joe Burrow, in his introduction to the national public, right, because he got that win over Mahomes on the big stage and made it to the Super Bowl that early, that's what we're going to judge the rest of his career off of. If that happens in year 9 or 10 for Burrow, we look at him totally different. Because it happened in year 3, we put these hefty expectations on him that I don't think he's going to end up reaching. His career might be closer to Carson Palmer and Andy Dalton than Bengals fans want to resonate themselves to understand.
Yet more optimistic about the Chiefs than the Bengals this year.
Chiefs all day. All right, so that's one team in the AFC. Let's go down to the team the Chiefs beat in the AFC title game, the Buffalo Bills, who they re-signed Khalil Shakir for like half the price of what the Bengals signed T. Higgins for. What do you like about the Bills this year, and do you think the Bengals can compete?
I am going to 2025 just as optimistic about the Bills as I was in 2024.
You picked them to win the Super Bowl.
Sure did, and I'll probably do it again.
I think the Bills actually, now that they have fortified themselves into this identity, I'm curious what they do with James Cook, if they end up actually extending him or possibly trading him. But they have an identity. They have a strong defense that they'll continue to retool as well. That got better on the back end of the year, and they got Josh Allen, and he's in a different stratosphere than Joe Burrow.
And that game was the AFC Championship game. It was the truest coin flip of all coin flips.
Yeah,
and I know eventually there's got to be another excuse to losing to the Chiefs, but that one was razor thin. The margins were very close. The Bills played very well, and they could have been your AFC champions.
Yeah. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, but they didn't.
But they're better than the Bengals.
They are better than the Bengals. That is easy to say. So the Bengals not better.
This is the game. Better than the Bengals.
Better than the Bengals, and it's an easy bar to clear, it feels like. How about the Ravens? That's your team. That's the Bengals division. You see them twice a year. It's going to be a shootout. How do you like the Ravens as composed against the Bengals right now?
The Ravens just probably lose one game against a bad opponent all year, and they don't do it again. The Bengals do that often.
Early and often.
They started the season doing that last year, which we thought was an aberration, losing to the Patriots in Week 1, where I was with Theo Dorsey for that game.
Yeah.
We couldn't believe it. That was our survivor pick.
That was
millions
crazy.
And millions of people lost millions and millions of dollars on the Bengals losing to the Patriots Week 1. We thought it was an improbability, but we got used to it by Week 18, seeing how many of those games the Bengals do lose. The Ravens don't lose that many games. It's the Ravens. They are better than the Bengals.
All right, so now that we have that baseline, and I think those were the easy ones, I want to move on to the team that just made a major extension today. The Texans signed Derek Stingley Jr., another one of those LSU Bayou Bengals. 3 years, $90 million. He's the highest paid defensive back in the history of the NFL, $30 million a year to the corner. And again, that Texans team is going to look a little different offensively. We'll see what they do retooling around that receiver room. But they've been there back-to-back years. They've won playoff games. Who would you take today between the Texans and Bengals?
It's because the division, honestly. It's very close. Even though, if you put the Texans in the AFC North, I think we're looking at a very similar record. But the path is there for the Texans year in and year out due to who surrounds them in their division and how it's being weighted to have a dynasty there. And they're the team that's in pole position. I think the Texans are going to do better in the AFC this year than the Bengals.
I just believe in their structure. we talked earlier about the Bengals' lack of ability to feel like they don't instill any confidence in you when it comes to their decision making. The Texans do, and they have ever since they changed over to DeMeco Ryans and brought C.J. Stroud in. There was a bit of a sophomore slump there. They've changed up things on the offensive line. They've got a new coordinator. I believe the Texans actually take a step forward next year, and that would put them ahead of the Bengals almost certainly.
We have 4 teams better than. Right?
4 teams already better than the Bengals, who have just now, again, reinvested into their offense in a historic way. This one's going to be a little bit more touch and go. All right, Los Angeles Chargers in the AFC West, which is only getting better by the day, but they have Herbert, they have Harbaugh, they also have an identity, and they were in the playoffs last year.
It's crazy how quickly the Achilles heel, and the laughing stock of the league was the coaching of the Los Angeles Chargers when they were coached by Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
And how it is the complete opposite because of Jim Harbaugh now. The reputation that organization, before it was they will fail against all odds, but now it's like they will succeed against odds. I like the Chargers' playoff hopes a lot more than the Bengals this year.
I'm in love with what the Chargers are building out there, and that feels like, paradoxical to say as a Chiefs fan. I hate how that division, you're bringing all these Hall of Fame coaches and whatnot. You're bringing it, how much do you need to stop Patrick Mahomes? Can everybody just slow down? Can everybody take a breath and let this guy achieve greatness without building up like an army, the Globetrotters, to try to take this guy down? I will say the Chargers have a lot of meat left on the bone. I want to see what they do to improve the weaponry on that offense. But I still, Herbert and Burrow, I think there's a marginal difference between those two quarterbacks no matter who you favor. And I like the coaching staff of the Chargers. And I absolutely love much better what they have on defense. Plus, they're coming off of a year where they had a lot of dead cap eaten up. This year, they free up more space. They have more flexibility. You got to believe they'll be better than the Bengals, man.
Guaranteed the Bengals will dominate the Chargers in jersey sales.
There you go.
That's the Bengals win. Because who is Justin Herbert throwing to the football to? Who will be scoring the touchdowns? Who will be showing up in Gatorade commercials?
So here's the true test of what your faith is in the Cincinnati Bengals. Staying again in that division, one of the toughest in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Today, we don't know who the quarterback is. Let's just assume it's Russell Wilson because he is the incumbent. There's rumors that it might be Aaron Rodgers. We do know they have DK Metcalf and Pickens. We do know that they moved off of Najee Harris. They might add a running back in the draft. And that defense is going to be a top 10 unit like they are year after year. Who do you like between what the Bengals are presenting and what the Steelers have current day?
Man, you combine these teams and you have the best team in NFL history. The defense of the Steelers and the offense of the Bengals, sign me up.
I will be in on that.
But that's not reality.
Yeah.
These teams are foils of one another, and they happen to compete in the same division. I won't go that far. I'm not going to exaggerate for radio purposes.
Yeah.
I won't lie to the audience. I won't lie to our fans. I probably do like the Bengals' chances to make the playoffs next year more so than I do the Steelers.
It feels like the Bengals have a higher ceiling, but the Steelers have a higher floor. I can't.
Well, yeah, that's just the Mike Tomlin MO, right?
Yeah.
It's having the highest floor in the NFL.
Yeah. So I think that if you do this thing, if you spin the wheel 100 times, there's a lot of times in which the Bengals actually do outperform the Steelers. But if I had to bet my hard-earned money on one of these two teams being in the playoffs next year, I'm going to go with the guy that never has a losing season, the guy that has a blank canvas at quarterback that'll get a good enough player at a discount, and a guy that has a top 10 defense. And it got DK Metcalf is going to make a huge difference on this offense. They looked way worse when Pickens was not available. Now you're going to have two of those kind of dudes on the outside.
Last week, we were at Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium, and I was trying to figure out how the Steelers' season ended last year.
Oh, my God.
And I couldn't quite figure it out. And I was like, I guess it was uneventful. And then you told me, wait, yeah, your favorite team, the Ravens, beat the Steelers in the first round of the playoffs. That's what happened. That's how little I respect the Steelers, to be honest, right now, as the organization stands in terms of competition in the AFC. So it's not saying much about the Bengals. It's more saying a lot about the Steelers and their reputation as a contender.
Yeah. Because, again, they had that peak in the middle of the year that everybody started believing. But, again, that's not the team that anybody's going to be shivering at as well. So